Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Endah Handayani from class 61. Now I will read a short story about wild plums from Greystone Coast. Wild plums from the frontier. I knew about white plums twice before I tasted any. The first time I was when the Sunday school women were going plumbing. Father hunched his shoulders and laughed without making any sound. He said white plums were small and inferior, and told us of fruits he had eaten in Italy. Mother and father were surprised that Miss Guyer and the school teacher would go Miss Sam to gather plums. I knew it was not nice to go plumbing, but I didn't know why. I wanna go once so that I would understand. The woman stopped at the house to invite mother. She explained that we did not care for white plums, but father said we feared to taste the sacred seed lest we be constrained to dwell forever in the nether regions. Miss Tom said, "Who? You don't eat the pits, you spit 'em out." And father hunched his shoulders and laughed the noiseless laugh that bothered mother. When father talked to people he didn't like, he short his word and used only the smooth best ones. Mother explained to me it was because he had spoken only German when he was little. After the woman had gone, mother and father quarreled. They spoke low so I would not hear them. Just before mother sent me out to play, she said that even wild plums might give savor to the dry bread of monotony. The second time I knew about plums was at Mrs. Plum's house when she was making plum butter. She said she couldn't ask us, and because the floor was dirty from stirring jam. The slums didn't use chairs. They had boxes to sit on, and the children sat on the floor with the dogs. They were the only people I knew who had hounds. I wanted, I wanted to go in. We never had visited them. We were at their house now because father needed to take home a plow they had borrowed. Father didn't like to have his machinery stand outdoors. He had a shed where he kept plows when he was not using them, but the slums left there where they unhatched. Mrs. Slum was standing in the door with her back towards us when we drove up. She was fat and wore wraps. Her wrapper was torn down the back. Mr. Slum came out and father talked to him. He was tall and lean. Mrs. Slum came and stood by the buggy too. Mother and father sat on the front seat of the buggy and Teresa and I on the back seat. Teresa was older than I and had longer legs. When she stretched her feet straight out, she could touch the front seat with her toes. I couldn't. She bumped the seat behind mother and mother turned around and told her to stop. My feet didn't touch father's seat, so I wasn't doing anything and didn't have to stop it. Teresa pinched me. I climbed out of the buggy without asking if I might. Teresa started to tell mother I was getting out, but waited to see what I intended to do. I was going to walk around behind Mrs. Slum. She had no stockings on, and the Sunday school woman said she didn't wear underclothes. I wanted to see if this was so. Mother called me back. Sometimes mother knew what I was thinking about without asking me. She took hold of my arm, hard, and as I climbed onto the boogie step and said under her breath, I'd be ashamed. Her face was twisted because she tried not to stop smiling at Mrs. Lam while she shook my arm. I kept trying to explain, but she wouldn't let me. Her stopping me made me want to say the thing she thought I was going to, but I didn't dare. Mr. Slum said he would bring the plow back in the morning. Father wanted to take it home himself then, but Mr. Slum said he wouldn't hear to it, being as how he had borrowed it and all. He wouldn't bring it behind the lumber wagon the next day and leave it in the road. They were going after more plums and would be passing the house anyway. The next morning after breakfast, father, mother, and I were in the kitchen. Teresa had scraped the plates and gone to feed the chickens. She didn't like to sit still while people talked. She liked to do things that made her move around. Mother and father were talking, and I was looking out of the window. If I looked at the sun and then away, it met enormous morning glories float over the yard. Father had told me they were in my eyes and not in the air, so I didn't call him to look at them. While I was watching them, Kobe Slump came up the lane in the middle of a lavender one. Clubby was bigger than I and stupider. When when anyone spoken to him, he stood with his mouth open and didn't answer. His hair needed combing and he didn't use a hands, handkerchief. Mother said good morning to him. He pointed to a wagon at the end of the lane. He said plums and ran back down the path. Mother and father started toward the road, and I went ahead of them. The wagon had stopped at the foot of the cottonwood land. Mr. Slum sat on the highboard seat, holding the reins. Mrs. Slum was beside him with the baby on her lap. Laney Slum was between them. The seat behind were Mrs. Guire and two women I didn't know. The rest of the wagon was full of children. Mr. Slum had forgotten the plow. All you aunts pile in, Mrs. Slum called to us. We are going plumbing on the Ninis Chow and stay all night. The youngest, the youngest The young'uns can go wooden. There ain't no work driving you this time of year, so just pile in. We got bidding for everybody. Mr. Slum sat looking at the horse's ears. Whenever Mrs. Slum stopped talking, he would say, I told you they all wouldn't go, but you would stop, and Mrs. Slum would answer, there now, Pow, you hush. I had not known one could live so long without breathing as I lived while Mrs. Lamb was asking us to go. I could see my heartbeat shaking my collar, a lace collar that was hanging by one end down my chest. I had forgotten to put it on the right. I waited for mother to leave her foot and plant it on the wagon hook, ready for killing me, for father to take her elbow and leave. Everyone would laugh a little and talk loud. They always did when women got into wagons. I had never seen mother climb into a wagon, but I knew how it would be. I wondered if father would jump in without tossing me up first. Father got into wagons quick without lugging or joking. I wondered I wondered if he would forget me. The children would see me and lean over the end board and dangle me up by one arm. I thought frantically of Teresa. Then father was speaking and my breath came back. He was saying if you happen on a plum ticket and outcome highly unlikely, you still face the uncertainty of finding plums. The season has been too dry, and should you find them, they will prove shade and unfit for human consumption. My color hung limp and motionless. My heart was dead. Father was spoiling things again. Mrs. Slum said they make fine gel, and Mr. Slum repeated, I told you they all wouldn't go, but you would stop. He was gathering me up. He was gathering up the lines. I hated to see mother's face feeling the stricken look it would have, but I knew I must smile at her not to care. Strangely enough, she had a polite look on her face. It was the look that made my fingers sting of glass. My mind slipped off from it without knowing what it meant. She was smiling. Really, it isn't possible for us to go with you today, she said. It was kind of you to ask us. I hope you will have a lovely outing and find lots of plums. As she spoke, she glanced at me. She moved closer and took my hand. Mrs. Lam looked down at me too and said, Can can the kid go? Kids like being out. Mother's hand closed firmly on mine. I'm afraid not. Without me besides, with a suffer suffer with a suffer look at my color. She isn't properly dressed. Of we can wait while she takes off that pretty dress. Mrs. Lam suggested comfortably, but Mother flushed. But Mother flushed and shook her head. Mr. Slum was twitching at the lines and squawking to the horses. His last, I told you, was drowned in shouted goodbyes, and the wagon clattered down the road. Mother walked back to the house, still holding my hand. Once inside, she turned me. Would you really have gone with those? She hesitated and finished. With those persons, they were going to sleep outdoors all night. I said, Mother shuddered. Would you have gone with them? Mrs. Boyer was with them. I parried, knowing all she did not say. Would sh- would have gone? Would you have gone? Yes. She stood for a long time, looking out of the window at the prairie horizon, then searched my face curiously. It might have been as well, she said. It might be as well. And turning, she began to clear the breakfast table. The next day, I played in the road. Usually, I spent the afternoons under the box elder trees or by the ditch behind the machine shed, where dragonflies and pale blue moths circled just out of reach. But this day I spent beside the road. Mother called me to the house to bring cups and called me again to gather eggs in the middle of the afternoon. She called me a third time, her face looked uncomfortable. She said, if the slums go by, don't ask them for any plums. Mother knew I would not ask. If they offer any, don't take them. What shall I say? Say we don't care for them. If they make me take them, refuse them. When the slums came in sight, the horse were walking. The nearest chow was 15 miles away and the team was tired. I could talk to the children as the wagon passed. It was just before it reached me. Mr. Slum hit the horses twice with a willow branch. The throated and the wagon rattled by. The children on the last seat were facing toward me. They laughed and waved their arms. Clubby leaned backward and cupped up a handful of plums. The wagon bed must have been half filled. He flung them toward me and another handful. They fell, scattering in the thick dust, which curled around them in little eddies, almost hiding them before I could catch them. The plums were small and red. They felt warm to my fingers. I whipped them on the front of my dress. And dropped them in my apron. I waited only for one secret read before I ran, heart pounding to tell my mother what I had discovered. She interrupted me. Did, did they see you picking them up? I told myself, standing like clubby slump, mouth open without moving. I laughed till two plums rolled out of my apron. Oh yes, I had them picked up almost before the dust stopped wriggling. I called thank you. Still mother was not pleased. Throw them away, she said. Surely you would not care to eat something flung to you in the road. It was hard to speak. I moved close to her and whispered, Can I keep them? Mother left the room. It seemed look before she came back. She put her arm around me and said, Take them to the pump and wash them thoroughly, eat them slowly, and don't swallow the skins. You will not want many of them, for you will find the bitter of not fit to eat. I went out quietly, knowing I would never tell her that they were strange on my tongue as wild honey, holding the warmth of sands that sun had fingered and the mystery of water under leaning boats, for I had eaten one on the road. Thank you.